Hey guys, welcome to another video. Today I'm going to go through these albums. Why are these albums so goddamn long? It used to be the case that you would gather around and hear a musician play because that was the only way that you could do it. There was no recording technology. With the advent of the gramophone, we obviously started to have a swath of people going in and recording on those original gramophone records. That became its own industry, and we saw through the technology changes throughout the decades, from the gramophone through to the 8-track tape, through to cassette, through to the compact disc, and now we're in the streaming era where time limitations are not applicable. I think I've found where this kind of happened, and this list of albums is going to be pretty indicative of the time that albums started to get longer. Usually when vinyl was out, you would safely say, without compromising sound quality, you could make a record to be about 22 minutes each side. If the artist intended to put more music on it, it could then be stretched out to maybe up to 23, 24 minutes. Anything over that, there is a lot of dynamic range that's lost in the recording. So with that in mind, bands were taking a lot of consideration into what they wouldn't put on, as opposed to what they would put on. And that all changed with the compact disc in the early 80s. The compact disc initially had a runtime of 74 minutes. Later, it could be stretched out to 80 minutes. So then we started to see an influx of albums that were hitting over the hour mark. And what seems to have happened is there was a lot of bloat on these albums. Some of them were quite good. Some of them were actually classic albums. Some of the albums that I've got on this list are actually some of my favourite albums from my favourite artists. But some of them are just so long. I'm going to start with a sacred cow. I'm going to start with my favourite band, Sonic Youth. 1995's Washing Machine comes in at a hefty 68 minutes and 18 seconds. Now, a good majority of that album is 2 tracks that make up about 30 minutes of that album. The first track being the title track, Washing Machine, which goes for about 9 minutes. And then the closing track of the album, the monstrous Diamond Sea, which goes for a whopping 19 minutes 37 seconds. Half of the album's duration is in 2 tracks. It seems like a lot to ask of a listener. Now, this is actually one of my favourite albums, but I will have to say that I do not sit through the Diamond Sea. It is a very good track. I understand its merits. I understand why it is that long. However, by the time I get to that, I've already listened to 48 minutes of music in one sitting, and it starts to get quite tiresome unless you consume this in piecemeal, which is what a lot of people are doing in the streaming age, right? You hop on Spotify and you put 2 or 3 songs on the way to work in the car, listen to the other half on the way back, then you go to the gym, you listen to some more tracks, the gym, or you're making playlists, you know. But I guess for the album, and the lost art of the album was artists being able to meticulously curate an experience for listeners. And when the CD format started to come in, what we started to see was the downfall of quality control, I think, in my view. And I will, at the end of this video, note some exceptions to this, which I think are valid for the long albums. So the next one we have Blur. And Blur released 13 in 1999. They've come off a slate of great albums that they've released. So there was Park Life, and then there was the the breakout release for them internationally is their self-titled album, which had Song 2 on it. So they were able to break into the US market and lots of other global markets with that album. So the follow-up to the self-titled album was highly anticipated. And so Damon Albarn at the time had gone through a breakup, and he was going out with a member of the band Elastica. I can't exactly remember what her name is, but you can put it in the comments. Now, when 13 came out, it was basically a breakup album. There was lots of songs about, breaking up and heartbreak, melancholy. It's actually a very, very good album. But it's 66 minutes. It is over an hour long, with some tracks I think that could be cut off, or some that could be shortened. I mean, is it their magnum opus? Possibly is, but it's long. The next one I'm going to go is actually egregiously long, and if there are people out there that say that they can stream this all in one sitting and they love every single song on it, good for you, because that's a true test of attrition to you. And the one I'm talking about is 69 Love Songs by the Magnetic Fields. This was broken up into 3 discs. What might seem quite obvious by the title of the album is it is 69 songs. It goes for 172 minutes. They're all songs that satire the nature of love songs. So it's very meta. Very, very cool idea. However, I think you might be able to accomplish that on one CD. Fans love this album. It has bits and pieces. I have my own playlist of the songs that are off this one. I think it's quite good. A lot of these albums on this list I like, I just think are too long. But at 172 minutes, you want to be pretty keen and you want to have a lot of good material for this. Next. Okay. So as we're getting into bloated territory, we get artists that take huge swings. And one of them was Justin Timberlake bringing out the 2020 Experience. Now, the 2020 Experience had some singles on it. I believe it had Suit and Tie and Mirrors. 2 really good singles. However, critically, as an album, it did not fare very well. It sold pretty well, but it wasn't considered anywhere near Future Sex Love Sounds. And I think I said that name right, but that was the one he did before that. This comes in a 70-minute runtime, which had no business to be 70 minutes. Just didn't need to be. Next, I've got another Sacred Cow for me. It's one of my favourite bands, but a good example of a fall from grace that, pretty hard to take over a number of years. I think in this case, the Smashing Pumpkins' Atom, a 3-part rock opera. Now, I think excess is something that is kind of part of the Smashing Pumpkins' oeuvre. They are no strangers to epic productions such as Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness' double album of 1995, and several albums that are over an hour long as well, that were single disc albums like Siamese Dream and Adore and Machine and the Machines of God. The difference between Atom and those ones I just mentioned is that that was in the golden age of the Pumpkins. This was during their height. It was the height of Billy Corgan's songwriting powers, and he had a lot of good material around that time. He had a wealth of good material. The problem with this recent Atom release is that there was a concept running through it, and the songs had to go with that concept. It is 138 minutes, and there's no reason why it should be 138 minutes other than the story. And if you wanted to do something like that, I think you could maybe make it a musical. That might sound actually quite silly, but you could probably do something like that. Billy Corgan did do a lot of promotion around this, and he did a podcast where he was talking about each track by track, which was quite cool. But for me, I didn't really find a lot of highlights in it, but I have taken about 4 or 5 songs off of that to put on its own playlist. The next I'm not going to talk about much, but basically Donda, and even in the standard edition of Kanye West's Donda, at 130 minutes, just does not need to be. We don't need that much music. There's not going to be the quality there. I'm sorry, man. The Load and Reload project from Metallica. Now, I would argue I will be a Load and Reload sympathizer to an extent, because I think what they were trying to do, especially with Load, was very, very interesting. The problem was that the songs weren't quite there. But when I listened to Load and Reload, I kind of considered that there could be one good single album there if they were put into one. Load, it pushed the runtime of the CD, and so much so that they had to make an edit of the Outlaw Torn, cut about 4 or 5 minutes off of it. So that they could actually fit it on the CD. But I just think that, when people have to sort of edit their work, it's a little bit like Tarantino. He can do with a good editor. Just because you can put all this stuff out doesn't mean you should. But it's subjective too. It is subjective. The next we've got Prince's Emancipation. Now, he was known as The Symbol, and the artist formerly known as At This Time. He'd broken from Warner Brothers Records after lots of disputes with them over creative control and a bunch of other things. And he decided to just go under The Symbol, artist formerly known as, or The Love Symbol, or whatever he wanted to call it, I don't really know. But he put out Emancipation. That was a 3-disc album, and there's no way that you would be able to find 3 discs worth of material on that. There's some good stuff on there, but no, I'm sorry. It's over 3 hours, that thing. Wow. The next is a bit of a infamous whipping boy when it comes to long albums, but I've got Yes's Tales of Topographic Oceans. Now, even though this is 80 minutes, so it rounds out 2 LPs when it came out. Now, there's 1 piece per side, so there's 6 sides and 6 tracks, 6 long tracks. And I would say that there's a lot of what's in there that's quite good. If you're a progressive rock fan, you'll listen to this album and you'll get something out of it, but you won't necessarily get a lot out of it over the whole duration. I think that they were able to do things a lot better and more concisely with albums like Going for the One, or Relayer, or Fragile. And a lot of people point to Fragile as being the classic Yes album. But on this, the ideas obviously did get away. It's very, as prog rock is, it's very high concept, it's very long, and it's a lot to absorb in one listen, and for that's why that's on this list. Okay, we've probably come to the first one that I don't like at all. And people do like this band, they're a highly beloved band. I like some of their stuff, I don't like all of their stuff. But this one is Aerosmith, and this is a release called Music from Another Dimension. Now, this album it goes for about 68 minutes. Yeah, 68 minutes. Now, there is no reason why an Aerosmith album should go that long. I think Nine Lives was pretty long as well. I think there's a lot of Aerosmith releases that run for over an hour. And it's that 90s CD period. Like, I will never understand how you can't bring stuff back to the sweet spot. The sweet spot is 30 to 40 minutes for an album. that's how God intended. You know, like more often than not, the shorter 40-minute albums are more enjoyable from start to finish. The next one I've got is Duran Duran's self-titled, or it's also known as the Wedding Album because it has old wedding photos of the band members' parents on it. Now, this is 62 minutes. It is This is long. This is a long album. It's got some really good tracks on it. It's headed by the single Ordinary World, which that song in itself it's a good song, but God, it is hard work. You know, once you realise how good the song is and how well it's put together, it still doesn't mask the fact that I think it's 5.5 minutes or possibly longer than that, and it does go on a little bit, just a little bit. In huge excess, one of the most anticipated albums of the 90s. Okay, it was the Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 by Guns N' Roses, running 76 minutes and 75 minutes respectively. Okay, this was a big one, and I know, as well as quite a lot of other people, that you could make your own super mix of Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 together to make arguably a better album than Appetite for Destruction. It is just there's a lot of guff on it. Like there's a lot, but for a band that was swinging pretty high, yeah, I mean they made the money. It sold. People buying it. I've got it. I've got both of them, but I don't listen to them all the way through. One last one that I just forgot was Oasis Be Here Now. I think that's about 70 minutes, 75 minutes, something like that. That was a long album. And I have a couple of exceptions that I want to just throw out there. I'm only going to give you 2. There's probably more, but this video will go on forever otherwise. The 2 exceptions I think for albums that could be long is To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar. I think that's very consistent. I think that keeps you engaged the whole way through. The other one I'll say, which has recently seen a critical reevaluation, is Janet Jackson's The Velvet Rope, which is well in over an hour. I think it was for about 70 minutes, 70 to 75 minutes. That album is a really, really good long album, and I would suggest, you guys have probably heard both of these, but I suggest that you go out and listen to both of those, because those are both absolutely brilliant. Brilliant long albums that keep you enticed for the whole time. So that's it. That's my list of long albums. Why are they so long? Like and subscribe if you want. And also leave a comment on an album that you think might be too long. Songs that you think are too long. I'll have a look at it, and I'll see you in the next one.